Hi, welcome to Smoking with Swami. I'm Swami Chaitanya, and that's Nikki.
Hello.
And this is Tim Anderson, our guest today, who is the chief buyer at Harborside Health Clinic. Is that actually your title, or what is your full title?
Purchasing manager is my full
Purchasing
title.
manager. Okay, that's good. Right. And
In
so
Oakland, at their place in Oakland.
at the one in Oakland on
1840 Embarcadero.
Okay,
yeah, we
right.
actually buy for both of our locations. Soon
Oh,
to be
you
a
do?
third here in the fall. Yep.
Where's the third going to be?
San Leandro.
Fantastic.
so the other one is in Santa Rosa?
No,
San Jose.
San Jose, yep.
San Jose.
And you do the buying for all three of those?
Well, two until the third opens. Yeah,
Yeah, you will
okay.
be. Oh,
Okay.
interesting.
Because I thought they used to have a separate buyer down there.
They did, and then they kind of had the realization of why have two buyers when you can have one, I guess.
Yeah, right,
I'm
buy
not
twice.
sure.
No, that's right.
That's
So,
interesting.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So we've been coming into Harborside for many years, and we come into the back room, and who do we meet? But we meet Tim. And so I was kind of going to say, if you're, say, a grower who wants to come to Harborside and have them buy your cannabis, so what happens? I come in now, I got a big bag of beautiful bud. What are you
Well,
going to
first
do?
you light
Yep.
the joint.
Oh,
Yeah.
but they can't light it there, right?
You can't
So-
light it there,
no,
but
no,
here
no.
in these,
Right.
you know. This, I would prefer if we could. It would
I
make
know,
my
I
job
wish
a
you
lot,
could,
a
yeah.
lot more pleasant.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you come into my office, you're going to either see me or my associate Travis,
Right.
who spends as much time at the counter as me, if not more, these days.
Wow.
And we're just going to ask to take a look at your cannabis. We're open to all sorts of cannabis, whether it is indoor or sun-grown. Depending on our needs, though, it can really depend on what we actually want to take from you at that given moment.
That given day, right?
Right.
The amount of people that we see and the amount of product that we see come in our door vastly outstrips the amount that we can actually sell at any given
Sure.
time. So the rejection can be very high.
Do people make appointments? Or is there just
We
certain
tried
hours?
making appointments. It was just too difficult to manage because
People would miss them.
cannabis people have a tendency to not make
Yeah, I
appointments.
know.
Right. So okay, so now what's the first? I bring you up my big bag, my big turkey bag, oven
Yep.
bag of stuff. What are you going to do
Nope,
first?
we're going to open it up and we're going to take a good close look. I'm going to pull down my light with a little scope on there so I
Right.
get a nice bright light in there, which is going to do a good job of exposing any powdery mildew or even sometimes
It's one of those
botrytis.
circular fluorescent.
Circular
light-
fluorescent. Fluorescent typically not really good for getting cannabis's like full color.
Right.
But in this sort of scenario, you want to see the contrast between the mold and the actual
Right.
color of the plant material. And so that harsh white light does a really great job
Right.
of actually helping that jump out.
And then the magnifying glass is right
Magnifying glass is just an extra bonus to be able to see in there really close.
there. So then the next thing you do is smell it, right?
Yeah, we'll get in there and smell it. I mean, obviously, we're probably smelling it first before
That's
we start
true.
getting in there and
That's
giving
what
it
I
a
was
critical
saying.
eye. I mean,
Right. Exactly.
The aroma is really, the most present thing because sometimes straight out the gate you can realize that someone's cannabis has spoiled or oxidized.
Yeah, right.
And that's automatically going to kind of put them off the radar in terms of what we want or need at that moment.
right.
No, I love it when you just get that whole bag and you put your head in there.
But see now, odor is a big issue for growers because sometimes they say we're going to cut you down because your neighbor complained about the odor. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, but we don't call it odor; we call it fragrance,
Yeah,
right?
fragrance,
and we pay
aroma.
more for that, right? And so it's this irony: is you can get busted for having too much smell, but it actually makes the crop more valuable.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you've smelled it, you've looked at it, and then you're making this calculation.
We're also going to throw in another stopping point in there, which you've seen a few times. We're going to get out our newfangled piece of technology, the QuantiCan,
That's right.
which is our machine from Steep Hill Labs that allows us to get THC percentages in about 5 minutes. It's actually probably less than 5 minutes these days, like 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And, we have to use that as a little bit of a barometer, too, because unfortunately, because of the innovation of testing and letting people know what percentage of THC their medicine is, there's a certain threshold below which cannabis is just no longer going to sell.
Right.
And so your 12% and below crowd is really just not going to work on our
Right.
shelves, or at
Right,
least for the kind of modern urban
Right.
consumer who
And that's
we
kind of a
cater
flash
to.
test, which is, within a certain ballpark.
Yeah.
Then you often send it off to Steep Hill Labs if you do buy it, right?
We not always. I mean,
Ah.
we rely on that as our singular potency calculation.
Uh-huh.
But you know what I really like about Harborside is you guys are, I think the numbers you give are real. As far I
Testing
don't know,
numbers, you
maybe
mean,
I'm
yeah.
making it up, but it seems like you can have the same exact thing, and one club's going to say it's higher just because it
Yeah.
looks better to sell. And even though your numbers might look lower, they're real. And I
We've kind of
appreciate that.
tried to sort of, we picked our lab a long time ago with Steep Hill, and we've stuck with them really religiously. At a certain point, there came a few labs on the scene that have put out some numbers that are quite a bit higher than ours.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's definitely like a competitive thing. A lot of dispensaries carry those larger numbers than ours, and we feel comfortable with the numbers that we put out there as being pretty accurate.
Well, but there is no actual standard for the testing industry,
No,
so
there
that's
isn't.
kind of a problem.
Yeah, I mean, they're all kind of struggling in a
Right.
void, and you just kind of have to pick who you feel good about and kind of go with it.
But as I understand it, I think didn't Harborside lend money to Steve Hill to get started or something like
Yes,
that?
Steve,
Because no one was interested in the early days.
Steve
right?
in the early days, was the one pushing for it, and he did kind of help incubate them and get them off the
Right.
ground. I'm not sure how it all actually worked, and
Yeah,
it's amazing that they've managed to stay this long. I mean, there's
Right.
not many
Yeah.
labs, if any, that have cannabis testing labs that have been in business that long. So
is Harborside still the largest dispensary in the world, considering Oregon and Washington and Colorado?
I mean, I think just by virtue of time, size,
Right.
and volume of patients, I don't think anyone really sees the volume of patients that we do still to this day.
What are you, up to 100 and something thousand, yeah?
I'm not even sure. I'm not going to quote the number because
It's a lot.
Gaynell would
Well, but-
correct me immediately, but I know it's impressive.
But the other thing is that whenever we come down to bring some weed for you guys to get, excuse me, I shouldn't say weed, cannabis, that we look out at the line and there's 30 or 40 people in the
Oh,
line,
it's
no matter
amazing.
what day, what time,
It's
whatever,
amazing.
Yeah.
right?
And there's all kinds of people. That's the other thing I love.
Yeah, we see
Every
hundreds
color,
of people in a
every
given
size.
day, and the
People in
diversity
wheelchairs
is impressive.
and really
Yeah,
serious.
no, you can see your
yeah.
obvious Berkeley professor and your street guy from somewhere else, right?
No,
it's
actually,
pretty
we've been
much
having
across-
a lot of fun. We've over the last month, we've had 3 separate dates when folks from Harborside have come up here to our ranch to experience what sun-grown is and where it comes from. And Swami takes them on a tour of the garden, and they've been able to really get a feel, because if you're living in Oakland, you don't know what it's like living out here. It's another world. So it's been really, really great to get to know. They got a great crew, I got to tell you. This
And
Harborside
a rare and
people-
unique thing too. I don't think it's very common in the dispensary world. This may be, a individual circumstance where the people selling the flowers at the end of harvest are actually seeing them in the ground as
growing,
they're
yeah,
Isn't that
well,
great?
doing their
right,
thing.
yeah.
I mean,
No,
that
it's
doesn't happen
great.
very often.
No,
So-
it's great, and you've got people that are. I like the variety of your bud tenders, because there's people that can deal with every kind of person. There's somebody who's been in a bad accident and really knows about pain, for example, or somebody who's older, or somebody who's younger, or someone who just wants to get high. But you've got that variety, which I think is so important.
and really like letting them sort of learn your process, to see it in the open, rather than most cannabis is grown with a sort of air of secrecy about
Right,
it,
right.
and they maybe wonder how it was cultivated, who was working
Well,
on
but
it,
that was
what you were
required
putting
by
into it.
the
Sure, it was
persecution.
required by the environment, the persecution.
But isn't that the motto of Harborside? Out of the shadows,
Yeah,
into
yep.
the light.
Yeah,
so
truly.
here we are.
And then we say out of the lights into the sun.
Into the beating sun,
Into
yeah.
the sun grown, right? And so, yeah.
And
Anyway,
in fact, that word "sun-grown," just to remind you all, was coined right here with Steve D'Angelo sitting out there.
and Caroline.
And Caroline
too.
was there, yeah.
Mhm.
And we.
So what else do growers now come in? You've looked at it,
Okay,
you've
we've
smelled it,
Looked
you've
at it,
tested
we've smelled it,
and-
we've tested it. At that point, we got to see we have in stock.
Right.
We're going to go check our inventory, and we're going to look at both, category of medicine in terms of like what I could potentially sell that cannabis for.
Do you
Right.
choose concentrates too, or only
Yep,
you
concentrates
do?
as well.
Oh, you do that as well. Oh, I didn't know.
But we're also going to decide based on variety too.
Right.
With certain common varieties, there's only so much we can really stock. So
Right, I see. Because you have a problem of just storage, right?
Yep.
First of all, you're a facility that's in the city,
Yep.
so security is a big issue, right?
Yep.
And also just how to store it properly in the dark, cool, and everything else.
And
right?
we almost never store our product as well as the farmer themselves can store it.
Yeah,
Is the
it's
honest
true.
truth? Is because
and that's why
the
you
farmer
need your
has
own
the, has the,
glass
the,
jar.
the care and the
Right.
Yeah.
the want to preserve their product. For us, we are just challenged by the volume oftentimes, and so
No, I
it's
can
in my
imagine
best
that.
interest to leave it in your hands until
Right.
I need it.
Right.
Now, that's the
right.
thing,
That makes
and
sense.
because of the security and also matching it up and so. But it's a tremendous job for all those people now to take that 2 pounds that you've just bought, and then put it into the little eighths packages and so on. There's a whole packaging department that's huge.
There
right?
is. It has to work its way all the way down the chain, getting lab tested, getting packaged, labeled, put out on our shelves, listed on the various menus, sent out either to the counter or to delivery.
I see,
You know,
and then on the website too.
Yep,
right?
and it just moves outward from there once it does enter into the system. You know, it's an impressive thing to actually even get your cannabis into Harborside, and I don't say that as like, you know, a challenge or a brag, but it's, you know, we're a facility that sees a lot of really amazing stuff.
Yeah, I bet.
And, you know, if I could buy all the cannabis that I saw that I thought was really impressive, like we would have a mountain.
Right.
You know,
yeah, so that is to say, don't be discouraged that there might be a time when you would come in when they would need that particular strain in right then, and so they would buy it.
Is this going to all change with vertical integration?
You know, it will change a bit, I assume. I mean, you know, that there will be less of an overall need, but I think it's going to just be one of those challenges of the marketplace that is going to push farmers, and you know, I've been seeing it here on your farm, you know, pushing you towards higher standards and higher quality. You know, really investing kind of secondary considerations into your product. You know, the inputs. Right. The sort of fair tradeness of it, and
that becomes what they call
consciousness
value
of it. Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's spring water, it's hand trimmed, it's all of that stuff. Compost teas, you know, local seeds, all those things that make it special, but it also takes special care and special handling,
truly,
and even to a certain extent special knowledge.
And it's that sort of nuance that's going to be kind of the next phase of the industry. So you know,
but
even
you also have your regulars, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, people like we've been coming there for 7 years now, right? And every once in a while you reject the pound or something like that because it's not quite. But by and large, we've had this great relationship, and so there are long-term people that you kind of can depend on. You know their quality and so on.
Yeah, I mean, and those people represent the real, I'd say, skeleton of our menu. You know, there's certain products that you see there time and time again, like Swami Select. You know, that will really kind of have the Harborside stamp of, you know, this is product we feel good about and we want to have on our shelves all the time. Yes.
Right, you know it's clean and pure.
Right.
And clean green product always gets a preference within our system,
always so
too.
great.
Because you're also classified clean green, right?
Yep.
That's part of the clean green classification is that the processing or the dispensary likewise has to meet the standards of this whole program, Clean Green. And we've been part of it. I think we joined in the second year he did it. And I think we were part of Harborside from their second year and so on. So it's been a good ride actually, and we hope it continues. Now, just Nikki started to broach it. What do you see the cannabis industry? How do you see it evolving in the next 5 years, 2 years?
Like I say, I think really it's going to be a lot of that sort of development into greater forms of craft. I oftentimes, even though I wouldn't compare the intoxication the same. I compare the cannabis industry a lot to how the beer industry operated. In that, at the time of Prohibition, everything shut down. After Prohibition, it all sort of conglomerated into a bunch of very large, structured breweries
whose names we
with
won't
huge
mention.
output. And then, after a period of time, people kind of came back to, what they used to like back. Maybe when they were a little less conscious of what was going on, and the industry started to diversify into all these little microbrews and craft brews.
But that's the way it was 100 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost every town had one or two breweries, but there were no national brands.
So that was us, 10 years ago on back. Now at this point, we'll find that again, hopefully, in not as long a time as the beer industry did.
It's interesting you compare it to beer industry because we always want to compare it to wine industry.
The beer industry might be closer.
Might be a better
First of all, hops and cannabis are very similar plants.
Very closely related.
Right. It is similar with the microbrews. There is the micro wineries.
But then there are micro wineries, too, that only produce a couple thousand cases or something like that. And there are the big guys, And then there are the big guys, the Gallows and so on. But, when we were talking to some winery owners, they talked about Two Buck Chuck, right? When Two Buck Chuck came in, everybody said, oh, God, that's terrible. The standards are down. Everybody's going to buy that. Nobody's going to buy our wine. Well, it kind of did that for the first year or so, but then all these new people started drinking wine.
Yep.
And then after they start drinking that stuff,
it's the entry level.
They say, well, okay, maybe I'll spend $5 this time, and wow, that's a big deal. What if I spend $10? And all of a sudden they're realizing there's a whole world of experience and flavor and so on.
Yep.
And the same goes with cannabis, right?
Yep.
And now we're going to what do you think about oils and vape pens and that sort of stuff?
I think that they definitely serve a need. That's probably the most diplomatic way I can say it. I find myself enjoying them sometimes, but I realize that they are, kind of in a lot of ways a sort of like Frankenstein monster of cannabis.
Well, they have a
Yeah,
pollution
right.
problem, right? The throwaway things.
There's
the
definitely that. I mean,
landfill.
they have batteries that can be charged, and there are some reusables, but there are a lot of disposable aspects too. I think they can be done right, and I've definitely like tasted ones that are, derived more from basic cannabis products that have a true cannabis smell.
Right, right.
But I think in a lot of ways they should be regarded less as a cannabis product and more as a THC product. Almost sort of a separate division in and of itself, unless it is coming from a more sort of
now you bring
essential
up a deep
derivation of
philosophical
cannabis.
thing about THC as what cannabis is all about, right?
Speaking of which, pass the joint. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. See, now the cannabis flower has upwards of 400 different compounds in it, right? THC being the one that we all love so much, but it's only one of the 400. And as I've said many times, the winner of the Emerald Cup is never the one with the highest singular THC, right? It's always a balance. And people who've been smoking for a long time and had a lot of different varieties, so might be, a little more knowledgeable, what have you, tend to go toward more subtle effects, right? Rather than, couch lock or just total body thing. But all of those have their purpose too. Sometimes you want a body lock couch thing, right? So we get more aware of how each kind of plant is affecting us. But what I like to talk about is what people say the entourage.
Yeah, the overall synergy of all those
Exactly.
compounds.
That's what really makes
Yeah, and I think, you find that in any sort of plant compound, that the more you reduce it to the one singular element, the more tricky it becomes, the more potentially dangerous
because it's
it can even
depending on the
become, too.
interaction.
Yeah.
I like your synergy word. That's a very good thing. Synergy, like energy that working together, right? And then that guy, Fred Gardner from
O'Shaughnessy,
he talks about agonists and antagonists. In other words, things that stop the action and other things that further the action. And the balance of the elements within cannabis, sometimes they actually further certain action, but they'll reduce other action. Switch them around and they'll do the opposite, right? So we're still learning all about that. But I really like that word synergy, the totality of it, rather than isolating certain things which you're doing, which you're thinking,
Well, you're probably one of the few people that sees even more cannabis than we do being judges in the Emerald Cup.
Right, exactly.
Probably yours is just spread out over the whole year.
Yeah, I get to spread it out. You guys get it all at once.
But another
sort of
difference,
avalanche.
someone pointed out is that you get someone bring your cannabis and they tell you what it is, what strain.
Yeah, that's a big
We
difference.
get something and they're
We don't
not
know
telling us
anything.
on purpose. They're not. So Nikki and I aren't really good about totally nailing a strain like you can do automatically, right? But we can tell you everything that's in it as far as the odors and all of that, because that's all we know.
Yeah, well, I think it's a really rare thing in the cannabis world to be able to be kind of the bridge keeper over this gigantic river of cannabis that sort of funnels through us. Wow. I don't think many people do get that sort of perspective as to just the overall sort of depth and breadth of different cultivation styles and
the shape of buds,
varieties, and how one
from
clone
Grass
can
Valley,
look
they
different
look
in
this
different
way,
regions.
from Mendo they look that way, and so on. So
Well,
anyway,
we are blessed.
we got just less than a minute left. So wow, that was a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Tim.
no, it's always a great conversation.
Thanks,
yeah, we like to share the
Good to see
energy.
you.
And
You
so
guys,
on.
Harborside rocks.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be up here finally.
Okay, Tim's a real deadhead too, so we have that in common to a certain extent.
True.
So anyway, thanks very much for joining Smoking with Swami. See you next time.